Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to Live Inspired in Studio with John O'Leary. Today, we have the great pleasure, the great honor of having a dear friend in studio with us today. He's going to be helping me guide you through the conversation today that we're having on achieving your personal victory. Three things that you do indeed have control over. And as we get ready to introduce this friend of ours, this friend of mine, I again invite you to chat, to text, to jot down the answer to the question, what is one thing in your personal life that you'd like to improve? We're already hearing from a bunch. I want to make sure, though, that we hear from you. So what is one thing in your personal life that you would like to improve? Just one. I know, man, I got more than one. Me too. But what's one? What's that very first thing you come up with today? The special guest. I'll talk about October in a moment. I'll talk about a new technology that we want to utilize to make sure this video is even better for you in a moment at the very end of our time together. I'll talk about some exciting things that we're moving toward within studio here in a moment at the end of our time together. But let's get right into the conversation at hand. Years ago, I met a gentleman at a principal conference. Through that relationship, he brought me in to speak at his school. He brought me in to speak at another one of his schools, and then another one of his schools, and then his wife's school. Not only has Matt done that, he's been the Missouri Principal of the Year twice, as if once is not already enough. He is so highly regarded that when I had an opportunity to bring on one educator, one leader of students, that I wanted to sit on my board of advisors, that Matt was the very first call that I sent out. And he also immediately got back to me with his answer that is always his answer, which is yes, I'm in for this. Matt travels with me occasionally. He is a board member, as I mentioned. He's a coach within our organization. And today he will be sharing the platform with me. He'll be speaking to us, my friends, on achieving your personal victory. 3 things that you have control over. So what is Matt doing today? Well, let me give you a little bit of the brag sheet. Matt is the #1 rated speaker for StevenCovey. This is a big deal. I happen to be one of the speakers for StevenCovey too, so I'm curious how in the world that happened. Matt's #1 because he's on fire. He's authentic, he's edgy, he's real, and he's going to bring that energy to us all today. I'll be right over here taking notes. I'll be engaging from time to time during this conversation. But right now, I have the great pleasure of introducing to you, my friends, a dear friend of mine. His name is Matt Miller. So put your hands together. Give Matt Miller a big hand. This is the first time ever we brought in someone else. So welcome Matt Miller to Live Inspired in Studio. Hello, Matt. Thanks, John. Enjoy it.
Thank you, John, for the introduction. And again, my name is Matt Miller. I live here right in St. Louis. I am a husband, a dad, a mentor, an uncle, a son, a brother, and I'm a former special education teacher, elementary principal for a long time, which is where John and I met. And my passion and the mission that I'm on right now is helping everyone live their best life. And so part of that is, as John said, I coach people to live their best lives. I also work with StevenCovey with the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So one of the things you're going to hear a little bit about today are some practical ways that we can improve that one area in our personal life. What I find as I work with schools and organizations everywhere I go is that it's very easy. People know that one thing that they really need to get better at, but it's taking time and some ownership and really, where do I start? And so today is all about that. Before we get started, I have to give some shout outs. K2 out in California, shout out to you. I know Mary Beth has her faith group circled around today. So Mary Beth, so good to see you, and thank you for that little email that you sent to me with encouragement. Our live in studio people that came last month, hello to you, and good to see you again. My buddy Travis Thomas in Florida, Tim Morrison right here in St. Louis, and most importantly, my mom, who's in a small little town in Corning, Iowa right now tuning in. And so I say that because most of those people that I just listed, I met right here in studio. I've been an original in studio member myself. And so I really encourage you. We have this small time together, like put down the phones, engage, get the journal out, and really let's pay attention to each other for the next 45, 50 minutes to really get better. And those are some strategies that we're going to learn today. So with that said, John had mentioned, what are those three things? This is where John and I met. This is Stanton Elementary, where I had the honor of being the principal. And it's where it all started. You can see our little love is the key at the top. And our lives have been great ever since. So 3 questions. Make sure those journals are out, or however you're taking notes. Here's the 3 things that we're going to talk about today that we truly have control over. Because as you thought about that thing that you wanted to improve in, Matt, I need to do a better job with work-life balance. I need to start eating better. I need to start taking care of myself. I'm not using my time wisely. I need to do a better job of staying in my circle of what I have control over. Focus on what's most important. Casey Chuck, uncluttering my life. My hope is with those pieces that we want to get better at, here's 3 things that we can take control over. Number 1, okay, Matt, I know that area that I want to get better at, but how do I change my habits? You know, I'm 30, 40, 50 years old, and I'm stuck in some bad habits. That quote, you can't teach a dog new tricks. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to change our habits? 2, where do I find time? As I sit down and coach people throughout the process, there's 2 themes that we start right away with. 1, work-life balance, and the second is, how do I find time? Matt, I don't have time to do the things that I need to do. So we're going to talk about that. And last but not least, how am I keep my mission in front of me? When my feet hit the floor in the morning, am I acting on the most important things in my life, or am I letting the day drive me? And John has talked to us about that numerous times here in studio. So let's get started. My passion and what I'm most excited about is when I sit down with an individual, as I work with a school, as I work with organizations, my passion is to ensure that they are getting this right here, that they're getting work-life balance. And the problem is when I show this slide, people are like, pick one. Like, I can't do both well. I'm either do work well or I got to do life well, but I can't do both. And my answer back is, yes, you can. And my usually what I say is, there's probably some excuses behind that, and we're going to try to uncover those a little bit today. So, how do we change our habits? You know, think back again. What is that one? I want you to be cognizant of what's that one thing that you really want to get better at in your personal life, and be focused on this as we unpack these 3 questions. StevenCovey, and again, I have the honor of being a part of this work for a long time. For those of you that don't know, we were the first school in Missouri to start the 7 Habits with Kids. And so we're not waiting for people to be 20, 30, 40, 50 years old. We're teaching 4, 5, and 6-year-olds how to be proactive and begin with the end in mind. And Dr. Covey reminds us that area that we want to get better at, if we want to make small changes, we work on our behavior. But if we want to make significant breakthroughs, we work on our paradigms. And so in your journal somewhere, you can draw this circle in this diagram, but it is simple and as hard as this. Is that how we see things are our paradigms, which determines how we behave and what we do, which is our practices, and determines the results that we get. And so if we don't like the results that we get, we need to come back to the top and say, how do I see things differently? And that's easier said than done sometimes, right? I know that. But the first step is having the challenge, or having the challenging ourselves to see things differently. And it all starts with us, right? If I ask the question, how many people do we have control over? What does that answer? John, what do you think?
About 1.
About 1, barely, right? So we know we only have control over ourselves. I'm blessed to have grown up in this on this farm right here in Corning, Iowa. And the great thing about growing up on a farm is there's no vacation days, there's no sick days. When the work needs to get done, it's on you, right? And so there's no excuses. And so my grandpa used to always say, when you point the finger at someone, the other 3 are pointing right back at you, right? And so it's the ownership of knowing that if I only have control over myself, being able to come to the top and see that. And here's the problem. If those of you that wrote down in the area you wanted to improve, and that's a relationship, too many times we sit in there and we wait for the thank you from our boss, or from our significant other, or from our parent. Or we wait for the I'm sorry, or we wait for the I love you. And the problem with waiting for that is it's outside our circle of influence. We don't have any control over there, right? And all of us know the times that we've waited too long on those. And so if we can go to the top of that see, do, get and say, okay, how do I see things differently? How do I have control over this situation? It makes things a lot better. And so one of the strategies I use every morning is to build a few minutes in my everyday for gratitude. That might be a little handwritten note. It might be a quick little text. But think of your circle of who your family, your most important people are, and spend a few minutes every day in gratitude. It'll help you see things differently, therefore you'll behave differently, and I guarantee you'll get better results. And so the second thing with this paradigm that we want to talk about is sometimes an event happens that challenges us to see things differently, that changes our behavior and the results that we get. Some of those are good things. This is my wife. She's the principal at Parkway West Middle School in here. Marriage helps us see things differently, right? We move from being independent to interdependent with others. The birth of my child, this is my little Grace. And so being a parent helps us change things and the way we see things differently. But there's also events that come into our lives as well, right? And so John, all of us are in studio here. We know of his story and how that event back on January 17th of 1987 changed the way he saw things. His family saw things as well. And so a big paradigm shift. I'll share a couple others and then I'm going to let you reflect. In my life, my mom 10 years ago calling me and said she had cancer. We all started seeing things differently, but instead of why me, why not me? And so she continues to fight that battle, has done a great job of kicking its butt. And congratulations, Mom, who's tuning in as well. This is my niece, Kate. Kate lost both of her parents to alcoholism, and so 6 years ago, we moved her into our family. I started seeing things differently in a father figure role as well of parenting her. This is my Malik. Malik lives in the inner city of St. Louis and attends, when he was in middle school and high school, would live with us during the week and go home on the weekends. He helped us see things in a lot of different ways, and we helped him see things in a different way as well. And so coming back to that see, do, get. And then most recently, sometimes we have loss in our family. And this is one of my buddies who we lost in May at the age of 39. And so I share those with you because I truly believe if we can start living knowing that everyone's fighting a battle. And when we know that, it opens up the space of empathy. And so with that said, now's the time to go over on the right-hand side with your chat box. What is one event that changed your paradigm and how you see things differently based on that paradigm? So I'm going to give you a few seconds to jot down what is an event that has occurred in your life that helped you see things differently. As you're filling it in, I'll go a little bit deeper with my friend Michael. Michael, at the age of 30, wrote down 40 things he wanted to do before he was 40. And that last thing on the list before he turned 40 was to go camping with his buddies. He went out camping. They had a great time on a Saturday night, sat around the campfire, went into his tent, and didn't wake up that Sunday morning. He was 3 days from turning 40. And so my paradigm shift in May was just that reminder again that we're not guaranteed tomorrow and to live each day to its fullest. So again, please take a few minutes, go over to that chat box. We really want to fill it up. I want this to be engaging as possible. Obviously, John, with the death of Jack Buck, we learned about that last Live in Studio Inspired. Sudden loss of a mom. Raylene meeting my husband. Hello, Raylene. Becoming a dad. So we have positive and challenging events that come into our lives. And the lesson number one in changing our habits is how do we come to the top and really make a difference of seeing things differently. Anything you want to add there, John? Amanda, thank you for sharing the loss of your newborn daughter. So thank you very much for that. And Abby, my brother being diagnosed with cancer. So again, it's just a reminder of no matter anywhere I go, like we're all fighting something, right? And so it just opens up empathy when we get into that space. And so for For those of you courageous enough to share, thank you so much for doing that. And so let's jump to the next piece, because in this model of see, do, get, John reminds us of, instead of why me, why not me, right? Why can't I be that uncle that brings Kate in? Why can't I be the one that's going to fight through this adversity? And so the second step to this is, number one is focusing on our paradigms, but second, using proactive language. I have to admit, I was sharing with John, I'm a little bit obsessed with this topic when it comes to proactive language, because not only how we see things determines our behavior and the results that we get, but what we say determines our behavior and the results that we get. And see, this is a self-fulfilling paradigm, is that if we see things negative, we're going to behave negative and most likely get negative results. Also, how we say and pay attention to our language. If it's negative, it's more likely that we're going to behave negative and get negative results. So, you were just in that chat feature. If you will go there again, little pop quiz. What do you think the number of words are that the average person speaks a day and the percentage that are negative? So just take a quick guess, go over into that chat box. Number of words you think we speak a day, percentage that are negative. John, what's your guess?
15,899.
15,899. Of course it is. And what do you think the percentage are that it's negative?
80.
Okay, 80. It's interesting that John just gave those two numbers. But go ahead and put your guess in right next into that chat box, please. Everyone that's tuned in, you should be putting two little answers in there. Number, slash, and percentage. So John was 15,899 with 80%, ironically. Kim was 10,000 with 50%. A couple more coming in. Amanda,
wow.
15,000, 85%. K2, 16,000, 70%. So, one more, 3, survey says 16,000 words, 80% negative. So think about that for a second. The average person speaks 16,000 words a day, 80% negative. And that's the 80 that we need to focus on. Turn on the 5 o'clock news tonight. First 15, 20 minutes. It's going to be everything that's going wrong in your local community and around your neighborhood. And then right at the end, we'll sneak in a little good news of the day, right? And so paying attention to our language makes a difference. In what we talk about a lot with Franklin Covey and the 7 Habits is proactive language versus reactive. And reactive language, we're guilty of saying these a lot, right? I can't. It's not my fault. I have to. They won't let me, right? And instead of paying attention to that, we go to moving it more to the proactive language. I can. I'm sorry. I choose to. Those of you that have kids or work with kids or around kids, this is a great, we talk a lot in schools about growth mindset and fixed mindset. How many of you have heard a little kid say, I can't, or they get frustrated or they give up? And so again, paying attention to our language with kids helps as well. And so making sure that we're moving into that growth mindset with them. I was reading a study a while back, and again, this is something that I'm really doing a lot of research on. We have 1,000 ideas that are going through our head every single day, but we can only focus on one at a time. If we focus on that one idea and it's positive and we say it out loud, it gives it a multiple of 7 that it'll happen. Not too much, right? But it gives it a better chance that it'll happen. What is your guess that if it's negative, it gives it a multiple of what? I'll give you about 5 seconds to come into your number. You don't have to go to the chat box on this one. John, you have any guesses?
Maybe 14, I don't know.
14? Multiple is 70. You can see I have Christine quoted down there at Harvard Business School. If we say something out loud, we're giving it a multiple of 70 that it'll happen. And I'm like, man, really? And then I heard this story about Bill Buckner. Anybody know who Bill Buckner is? First baseman, right? Boston Red Sox. 1986, 87. What is Bill Buckner known for? the grounder that went between his legs, right? Game 6 of the World Series, Bill Buckner, slow ground ball goes between his legs. They lose Game 6. They end up losing Game 7 in the World Series. Bill Buckner recently passed away. God bless his soul. And what they recently just found out about a month ago is that a tape came about that 12 days before the World Series, they had a mic and they said, "Bill, what do you think of the World Series?" And Bill goes, "I just don't want to be the guy that a grounder goes between my legs and I end up costing us the World Series." So it's kind of stopped me in my tracks a little bit when I heard that story, that proactive language and reactive language is powerful. What we say determines how we behave and the results that we get. And then the last piece on how we change our habits, changing our paradigms, looking at our language, this is probably the most important and the most impactful, is focusing on our circle of influence. And you're like, "Matt, what's the circle of influence?" It's this right here. And so if you will get your journal out, if you haven't already, a piece of paper, and if you will draw 2 big circles, look like this, okay? In fact, let me do this. 2 circles, little circle, big circle, right? Okay? And for the next 30 seconds, let's focus on what we call our circle of influence. Our circle of influence are those things that we have control over, right? That we have control over. Outside circle, circle of concern, are things that we don't have control over, but we spend a lot of time talking about those things. And so let's stay in the circle first. What are some things that you have control over? So jot down a few of those things that come to mind real quick. What are those things that you know you have control over? Give you a minute to jot down a few of those notes. Circle of influence. And as some of you are focused on your journal and writing down, I'll give you a few of those that we talk about. So if you look at this next slide, circle of influence, things we say, books we read, where we work, where you travel, how you spend your time, what you buy, who you vote for. Some might put in attitude, how I see things, right, from just what we talked about, the language I use, right? So the more we can stay, and this is truly liberating. If you take this week and say, "You know what, I'm going to really stay focused on my circle of what I have control over, and those things that are outside my circle, I'm not going to worry about." It'll truly be liberating. And so I challenge you this week to really look at this inner circle and stay focused on that. Now, let's move for a second to that outside circle, which is the circle of concern. Again, these are things that we usually spend a lot of time complaining about, worrying about, and then we realize we don't really have a lot of control. And then what we usually say is, "I don't have enough time," yet we spend a lot of time out on this outside circle. So move to the outside and look at what are some things that I have recently spent a lot of time talking about and worrying about with others that at the end of the day I realized I don't have a lot of control over. So again, 30 seconds, kind of jot down some things in that outside circle. What are some things recently that you spent time on that you're like, "Wow, I wasted a lot of time talking about those things and I realized I don't have a lot of control"? Those of you that need some ideas, here's the second diagram. Circle of concern. How many of us are guilty of spending a lot of time here worrying about the weather, other people's driving skills, right? How many of you came in this morning and let a neighboring driver on the road influence your behavior or your attitude? Internet comment sections, okay, our presence on social media and spending time there, others people's reactions, right? So the theme here is, again, coming back to the circles of see, do, get, the second circle being our circle of influence. And so our challenge this week, think about that personal area you want to get better at. In that personal area, what do I truly have control over? Point the fingers back at you and say, "You know what, this week I'm going to commit to staying in this circle right here of what I have control over." This is a diagram. You can take a screenshot with your phone if you like, of what I have control over. And we talk to this a lot with kids. You know, I have control over doing my homework, who I hang out with, taking care of myself, asking for help, how I respond to others. And the idea is, and the paradigm is, I'm going to stay right in that circle. Here's a couple strategies that I've done personally. Not that everyone has to do this, but it's helped me in my personal life. I cancel cable. I don't have anything against Charter Communications, but what I found was I'm less likely to be sitting on the couch now and let somebody else feed me versus my choice of feeding into my news. I limit my social media. I'm selective with the people and radios that I have. And so those are some strategies that we can use. But here's a fun one that I saw the other day is they called it this 10-second therapy. This would be another great screenshot as well, or writing it in your journal. The question is, do I have a problem? No. Don't worry about it. Okay? Do I have a problem? Yes. Can you do something about it? No. Don't worry about it, right? Or the last step is, do you have a problem? Yes. Can you do something about it? Yes. Do it. It literally boils down as hard and simple as this right here. There's a quote out there that says, if you can change it, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude. And so I highly encourage you, as you think of that area you want to get better at, these three things come to mind. I need to look at that see, do, get model, and what the results that I'm not happy with right now, how can I see things differently? How can I be paying better attention to my positive language this week? And then last, and most importantly, and I think most powerful of these three, how do I stay in my circle of influence this week to really make a difference with others? Anything you want to add to that, John?
So I love it. I would ask you to speak to, so that's true for us, and how do we respond with a spouse, a partner, a child, a difficult coworker? How do we not only live this ourselves, but attract others to join us in the circle of control?
So John's point is, hey, that's great. I can stay in my circle, but there's a lot of people on the outside of that circle that their behaviors, I have to figure out how to be interdependent with, right? And so that is challenging. And how to use those strategies, I think if you come back up, and again, don't wait for that person to change, but continue to focus on how you see that difficult situation, use positive language around that, and truly stay in your circle of what you have control over. So thank you for that reminder, John. All right, so we talked about how do we change our habits, and the second question is, okay, Matt, that's great, but I'm busy. Like, I'm in the whirlwind. I don't have time. I'm waking up, I'm getting to work, I'm giving everything I have there, and then when I come home, I'm exhausted, and then I wake up and then I do it all over again. How do we find time? Well, I'll tell you, as I work with organizations and people all across the country, time is our greatest asset. And if we can really pay attention to how we're using it, we can really put some great things in place. And so with this area, most importantly, I'm really going to try to give you a couple practical ideas on how to use your time better. I showed you this picture a little bit ago. This is my daughter, Grace. You can tell she likes dance, and she's the prettiest girl in the world. This is the reason we stopped having kids, and I say that in a joking way. This is my Matthew, and he is Matthew Warren Miller Jr. because having two principals in the house, we couldn't figure a name to name him, so we just named him Matthew Warren Miller Jr. I say that, and I keep these pictures around all the time because these are the two most important people in my life. And I blinked, and now they're this old. And so I show you that picture because those of you that have little ones at home and you're in that rat race and you're going nonstop, it's a reminder that time's flying. And so to enjoy that, to enjoy the four that John has at home and the Henrys and Graces, and making sure that we're doing everything to put them first. Because as someone who just watched his son graduate and is 4 weeks into being an empty nest, I would give anything to walk by that room right now of his and see it messy. I would give anything for Grace to be screaming at me from upstairs wanting to talk about something. And so time is precious, and I encourage you to make sure that whatever your picture looks like this is my squad, this is my family, make sure we're putting them first. Because here's what happens everywhere I go. I ask this question. Let me guess, you're working really hard throughout the day, and then you're so tired that this group, your family, is getting less of your time and more of your reactive behavior because of that. And think about that for a second. Those we love the most, sometimes are the ones that sacrifice because of how we're using our time. And so we can be highly effective at work, which then allows us to get out of there and go home and be highly effective with this group right here. And so again, what we're striving for is this work-life balance. You can achieve this, and again, I will say, and I'll be sharing my information at the end, I'm passionate about this. My passion is helping others. And so if this is something you really need help with, I cannot wait to reconnect with you again. I'm an in-studio member as well. I would love to be an accountability partner with you. We can't go into detail today with this. You can Google it, it's out there. But when we look at our time, we really look at it in 4 quadrants. And the 2 axes are urgent and important. And what we find a lot is we can live a day being an urgent and important. And some of you are like, Matt, I'm in it right now. Every single day I feel like I don't get anything done, and then tomorrow comes. I applaud those of you that are tuning in today, because you're in Q2. You're in proactive work, creative thinking, relationship building, learning and renewal. And I know for some of you, that was tough. You walked in this morning, you had a to-do list, or you're at home and you just got everything done and you're looking at your to-do list as well. So kudos for those of you that are in studio today, because you took the first step in getting in what we call Q2. And the problem today is everyone thinks everything is urgent and important. So paying attention to our time and identifying it is absolutely huge. Because again, everybody wants to skip the process. They want the answer now. We're into a give it to me now society. And so paying attention to that urgent and important is critical. So let me give you a couple steps to do that. The first is identifying the 2 or 3 most important things you need to do today. So when we wrap up today at 11:30 Central Time, 12:30 Eastern Time, those of you on the other coast, looking at that to-do list and saying, okay, what are the 2 or 3 most important things I have to accomplish today? Because here's what happens. We make a to-do list, right? And then we make another to-do list. And then we make another to-do list, right? And how many of you have lists all over the place, or even that one list, but you're like, there's so much on there, I don't know where to start, right? How many of you make a to-do list and you put a couple things on there that you've already done and then cross them off? I do it, right? Guilty. Gives you a little momentum, right? Nobody else knows that you've done them, that you put them in there, right? But we get so observed with all 3 of these. So step 1, get everything on one list for the week. So we're on Mondays. Mondays are the perfect time to get organized for the week, right? So take everything that you have, whether it be home and work and so forth, and getting on it on one list. I'll give you an example. This is one of the clients that I work with, and every week he lists the most important things, the second most important things, and the third most important things. They're all on one tablet. And then as he approaches each day, he stars the 2 or 3 most important things that he's going to work on that week. So you can notice as he gets to the end of the week, he's crossing things off and so forth. If you looked at that entire list, it would be overwhelming, right? But if you just take the 2 or 3 most important, you can make it happen. Just last Thursday, I was working with another client, and she was so overwhelmed. You notice that Q1 up there? She thought everything was urgent and important. I have to get everything done. Well, what that does is it landlocks us, and we can't move on anything because we don't know where to start. So we threw everything up on the board. You can see parent emails, an elementary program, website. We put everything on the board, and then I said, okay, it's Thursday morning right now. What are the 2 or 3 what are 2 things that you can do this afternoon? And then don't worry about anything else. So I think those were the 2 black check marks right there, vacancy and U14. And then I said, okay, now that you have those 2, on Friday, what are the 3 things you need to get done? And I think those were purple check marks. So it was a parent connection and practice. Just by doing that activity that Thursday afternoon, that night, she already felt better because she tackled the 2 things that were most important in her day. So as I said before, get everything on a list. And then the second thing is, what are the 2 or 3 most important things I need to do today? So as you look at your to-do list, this is time to go back into that journal right now, or grab that to-do list that's next to you. If some of you, it's your reminders on your phone, swipe left or however you get to that. Don't let the whole list be in front of you. What are the 2 or 3, you can have the whole list, But identify, bold, circle, star. What are the 2 or 3 most important things I need to do today? MB, I like your question. But leisure never gets too important. What to do? So, MB, your 2 or 3 most important things, the first one is building in that time for you. Building in that time for you. And so somewhere on that to-do list today, I want you to find time this afternoon or this evening for that leisure time, to make time for you. Because that is the most important thing that we need to make sure of, is that we're taking care of ourselves. John, what are your 2 most important things today on your list?
Can I take?
Yep.
Hey guys, I haven't gone out for coffee. I'm not sleeping over here in the corner. I'm actually taking pages of notes in my journal. And as Matt and I were working through this over the weekend, we touched base on Friday, on Saturday, and then again shortly Sunday. And I shared with Matt on Sunday that Saturday morning early I met with a men's group. I'm going to go full screen on this, Matt, because I want to see who I'm speaking to. I want them to see me. I met with this group of guys that I've been meeting with about every 3rd week for 9 months now. So about every 3 weeks we get together. And I shared with them how busy I am, all the things on my to-do list, and how there's really not a whole lot of more people more important to me in the world than my mother and father. And it's been 8 days since I'd seen them. Before them, really no one more important than my grandmother, who I had not seen in about a month. Okay, my grandmother's in a retirement home. She doesn't remember when I pop in, but I think it's critical in life to remind people, whether they remember afterwards or not, that you love them in real time. I hadn't seen her in 5 weeks. And so I shared this with the guys that I love and I share honestly with, kind of like studio. And as everybody was leaving that morning, one of them said to me, I kind of think it's BS. Well, what is exactly that you think is kind of BS? And he said that excuse that you don't have time for your mom and dad or your grandmother. And we talked about that for a moment, and then I gave Billy a hug. He walked out. I was there holding a coffee, and I realized Billy's right. Billy's right. 30 minutes after we had that conversation, I'd showered, grabbed a pair of shoes. They mismatched, by the way. And I went out and visited my grandmother in a retirement home, a place that I'd not been in 5 weeks. After that, I called my mother and father and asked them to one of my kids' soccer games. That was the excuse. Too many soccer games. Man, I can't see my mom and dad. Well, they decided to join us at the soccer game sideline. We spent an hour together, not watching kids, but talking as adults, having fun, and occasionally glancing toward the field. Then we picked up my little brother. Beth and I are big brothers and big sisters. I asked mom and dad if they wanted to come along. They did. We went to a park. We had ice cream. We talked life. We spent 2 hours together afterwards. First things first, Matt. First things first. It's very easy, all of us, to make a list of things we cannot do because we're doing a whole lot of important and urgent things. But I think whatever matters to us most will, in fact, get done. Matt taught me that. He's now teaching it to us, and I'm taking notes to make sure I don't forget it. Because I think knowing it is great, but executing and living it is what we're called to do in studio and beyond. So stay alert, my friends, because Matt's not done yet. I think he's got a lot more to share with us still.
So, John, thank you for that. He actually told me that story this morning, and appreciate that. And MB, thank you for reminding me, because when I think of the to-do list, I think of everything that's on our list, and that's both personally and professionally, right? And so building that time in for ourselves is critical. So let me find where we're at. So we have those in the journal. So again, getting that list in front of you, the 2 or 3 most important. The second is what we call scheduling Q2 time. And we have to be very intentional with taking care of ourselves, right? So am I going to set that alarm 30 minutes early to do something for me? Am I going to make sure that I leave work right on time so I can hit to the gym? Or spend some time in the morning in whatever I need to do to what we call sharpen our saw and take care of ourselves. And so again, Q2, as a reminder, it's that critical thinking, relationship building, recreation, right? And so this is a screenshot that I just put up there. But how can you this week, as you look at your calendar, schedule that Q2 time? And the strategy here is when I'm in that time, I'm laser focused on those 2 or 3 most important things that I can do. If it's work related, it's during that work time. But again, we turn our phones upside down and we make sure that we just really pay attention to our time and we focus on those 2 or 3 most important things. The phone is on silent. The door is closed and we're lasered in on those pieces. Some of you might be like, well, I can't because I'm constantly being interrupted. As you start practicing this process and sharing it with others, organizations that are highly effective, people are scheduling this Q2 time to make sure the 2 or 3 most important things are getting done for the day. And then the next strategy comes back to a number that John threw out to us a while back. For those of you that were in studio, he threw the number out 160. Can anybody remember what the number 160 was? The number of times that the average person now is picking up their cell phone. Think about that for a second. 160 times a day. And so one of the things we know is we're all guilty of this, right? When we get bored, some of you maybe when I've been talking have glanced at your phone, right? No, I'm just kidding. But I've actually done that with John as well. So we're all guilty of that. And putting that phone down is critical. And I find that it really takes away. It's the number one thing that's killing effectiveness, not only at the workplace, but at home. How many times are we guilty of, I'm on one couch, my wife's on the other, we're both sitting on our phones, the TV's on, and we're not even talking, right? And so one of the things we do in organizations that I work with is the number one team norm that we put in place is phones in the middle of the table. And we know from time to time that we might need to pay attention. We have a loved one in the hospital, somebody watching our kids, the dogs at the vet, whatever that may be, that we need to pay attention to. But it's critical that we put those phones in the middle of the table and be present for the 30 or 45 minutes that we have. It's funny, we've had this process in for a while, and I was facilitating a meeting a couple weeks ago, and then all of a sudden I noticed this lady over looking at her watch, and then looking at her watch, and then looking at her watch again. Well, what was happening? Her text messages were coming to her phone. And so now in that meeting, we put phones in the middle of the table, we take off our watches, because we truly need to be present. I was at a meeting this morning at the West County Fire District at 7:15 this morning, and I was paying attention to this, knowing I was coming here. Every single person in that group checked their phone in the 20-minute meeting that we had. Again, everyone feels that everything is urgent and important. So I encourage you to do that.
We share with them, because we were talking about this internally, and we challenged you, saying there's no way we look that often, there's no way we spend that much time online. So you encouraged us to swipe left. Explain that, how they can do that right now if they'd like.
Okay, so coming back to this right here, our phones, is I had a client recently was like, you know what, that 160, there's no way. There's no way I'd check my phone 160 times. And I actually do this now everywhere I go. I was in Clever, Missouri this Friday, and I did it in front of 200 people. And I looked at the lady and I said, okay, 160? Okay. Oh, I noticed you have an iPhone. Swipe to the left. So she swiped to the left. I said, scroll down a little bit. See that screen time? You've already been on your phone 2 hours and 17 minutes, and it's only 9:30 in the morning. And she's like, that can't be right. I said, well, okay. You can not believe that, but keep looking at it every day just to pay attention. But I said, go a little bit farther. See that number 52? 52 times you have picked up your phone already, and it's only 9:30 in the morning. She's like, no way. And I'm like, well, way. But you can not believe it, or you can start paying attention to it. And so it's something I pay attention to, my kids pay attention to, making sure that there's reasons we need those devices, and then there's also excuses that we make to make sure that we go there. And so I encourage you to do that as a family as well, to establish that process of building norms into that, into where you have screen time, at the supper table, that those phones are down, the TVs are off, and that we're truly present with each other. So where do I find time? Pick your 2 or 3 most important. Again, not only work related, but how are you going to take care of you? How are you going to build in family time today and throughout the week? Schedule it and really pay attention to that technology. So third piece, find home stretch. Okay, Matt, some good tips on how we change our habits. Okay, I'm a little bit clearer on how I can find some time, but how do we keep our mission in front of us? John's mission is so clear that I know it because I've heard it so many times. God demands it, family deserves it, and the world starved for it, right? I think I said crave the other time, but starved for it. So, a personal mission statement. It's a written constitution by which we make all decisions in our life. we won't be able to unpack all of this. It's a start of the conversation, but let me give you some examples. I already talked to John about this love is the key piece and his mission statement, but here's mine: faith, fitness, and family. So how do I keep this in front of me? Every single morning, I put this little bracelet on right here. Let me go to full screen. So this bracelet right here, I put on every morning, and I spend some time in faith. It gives me a few minutes to be grateful and to spend some time there and what I know is the most important for me. The second is fitness. I have my little watch here, but I'm keeping track of time. And so I put this on here to make sure I know I'm best when I'm getting my steps and being active. And so that is counting my steps today. And then most importantly, family. You'll see this little bracelet right here. Our family chooses a one word each year. And so everyone in our family wears this bracelet. My word is execute for the year. But by putting these on and taking them off every night, I do the most important things first. And so this morning, as I put my bracelet on, I spent some time in faith. As I put the other bracelet on, I checked in with all my family members via text and sending my mom a little Marco Polo and doing all those things. And I'm better today in front of you because I've put those first things first. So when we talk about before scheduling the 2 or 3 most important, if we don't do the most important, we'll get to the end of the day and we haven't achieved those. And so what is something you're keeping in front of yourself to make sure that your mission is alive? I'll also share with you as a family, we have a family mission statement, and that is love family, love others. And so every Sunday night when I had the honor of having all those kids in the house, we would go around the table and everyone would share, what's one thing you did to love family this week? What's one thing you did to love others? I highly encourage you in whatever your family structure is, have this conversation. What do we want to be known about? What do we as a family want to be focused on? And it truly was empowering because they knew every Sunday. So now I have to send a group text out every Sunday that says, what's one thing you did to love family this week? What's one thing you did to love others? So mission statements keep us focused on the most important. This is my screensaver. So every time my screen goes blank, there's a reminder there that says love family, love others. And again, keeping it visual is the key. Here's some tips you can jot down in your journal or take a picture of it with your phone. Good mission statements. They're based on principles of effectiveness. They clarify our most important. You can kind of read down through that. Represents the best you. Matt, where do I start? Where do I start on a mission statement? One of the activities that we do, we call this beginning with the end in mind, is you'll notice the picture that's on the screen right now. We start with the various roles and key people that we serve in those roles. And so if I was to fill out that blue part, it would be husband to Annie. It would be dad to Matthew, and dad to Grace, and uncle to Kate, and son to my mom. You know, John would have husband, father, 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 father. You know, he's going to run out of spaces, right? Friend, brother, son, all of those pieces. But what are the most important roles? And then we always picture at your 80th birthday, and we circled everybody up, what would they say about you? And if we're living our best lives and we're living into those people, those tribute statements would be exactly how we behave on a regular day. I'll give you an example.
Slides back on.
Whoa! Thank you. John just said, dude, you're referring to slides and they're not even there. I told you this is my first time. Here we go. All right. Reverse. Thank you. So that slide I was just talking about, let's come back to this. Again, you can take notes on it, take a picture, mission statement. Here was the sheet I was referring to. My sincere apologies. Technology difficulties here. Making sure that we're reflecting on who the most important people are, and are we living to the tribute statements that we would hope that they would say. So I'll give you an example. Both of my kids, I knew the most important thing to them was to make sure that they're at events. And so that was hard sometimes, right? Being a principal with a lot of kids and a lot of parents and a lot of teachers and responsibilities, there were times that I had to say, hey, I'll be at the start of that parent-teacher conference, but Grace has a swim meet tonight. Or, hey, I'll kick off that music concert, but I can't stay to the end because Matthew has a game. But that's being courageous and knowing that these are the most important things. I knew these two kids wanted to look up and make sure that their dad was there. And so having conversations with those people that you love the most is critical to make sure that we're staying mission-centered. So what is your mission? What is something that you're keeping in front of you? What is that statement that you're living by to make sure that you're putting the most important things first? And as you're reflecting on that and jotting a few notes, one way to start, I referenced a little bit, is I highly encourage a one word. I sent this text out in January and said, okay, what's everybody's word for the year? My Matthew, 18-year-old kid, just went off to college, proactive, not being told what to do. Grace, being confident. Kate, growth, and moving to Kansas City on her own. And then my wife, finding balance. She's running around with about 1,170 kids today at Parkway West Middle School, how to find balance between everything that she's responsible for. And what I find in this activity, if you circle your family up, they're always spot on. They know exactly, just when you answer that first question today, what do I want to get better at? We all know what we want to get better at. It's keeping it in front of us to make sure that we act on it on a daily basis. So, chat box time. If you'll move over into the right-hand side, let's fill this up. We only have a few minutes left before we close. But what is that one word that you want to stay focused on for the remainder of 2019? I shared with you mine is execute. I shared some proactive, confidence, balance. John, what's one word that comes to mind for you?
The first was love, but I crossed it off and wrote down impact.
Okay, so John's is impact. He did have love first, but impact is his word. So fill up that chat box while we have a few minutes left. If we had to start living mission-centered, what is that one word that really defines how you want to live mission-centered and a word that would keep you focused? Chris, thank you for being one of the first in there. Impact. Raylene, intentional. Brooke, patience. Patience is a big one, right? Proactive people have big pause buttons. We're not highly reactive. We hit the pause button and then think about how we're going to respond. Suzanne, balance. Amanda, cultivate. Ooh, I love that word, cultivate. JT, authentically. Love that word, authentically. And I think that when we're truly present in our relationships and with people and in the space that we're in, we are truly authentic, right? Stephanie, trust. Suzanne, balance. Thank you all for getting into the chat box today. Awesome. So keep filling those up as we get into the home stretch. I'll tell you a couple of stories that make this real for me. My daughter, her sophomore year, she's a triathlete. She's on the triathlon team at North Central College in Naperville. Sophomore year, won the Division III National Championship. She sent me the YouTube video that they interviewed her afterwards, and I'm watching it, and she didn't give me a heads up. And all of a sudden, I'm listening, and they said, "What do you remember most?" And she goes, "My dad, throughout high school, never missed one of my swim races. I could always count on looking up in the stands and seeing him there." That was a moment for me. That was a moment that I realized that she realized the sacrifices I made to make sure that I was there. But I knew that was the most important thing. When our Kate was leaving for UMKC, this is our chalkboard door that goes out to our garage, and Grace decorated it the day she left and said, "We love you, Kate. Best of luck to UMKC, and always remember to love family, love others." I knew that day that our little family mission statement was sticking, and our kids knew it. I recently was in Des Moines, Iowa, working with a large group, and that evening I was supposed to be at a dinner. Instead of going to the dinner that night, I realized, you know what? I'm only an hour and a half. And I don't know if you can see this, but this is my messy mission statement that I've been drawing and scribbling on. But right up here, in this top left-hand corner, in the role of son, it says what? Visit. And so I'm sitting there doing that activity and realize, you know what? I'm not going to the dinner tonight. So I drove an hour and a half back to Corning, Iowa, knocked on the door, walked in, nobody was home. Went out to our farm, went out there, knocked on the door, nobody was home. But finally, as you can see in the picture, I found my mom and dad and surprised them and had the best evening ever. And so again, I would not have done that if I hadn't practiced this mission statement. And then last but not least, this little guy right here, my Matthew, he challenges us in a different way. If you're getting on him, he'll say, hey, you're not loving family right now. And then we'll just start laughing and so forth. But the story that resonates the most is during his senior year of basketball, before the season started, I sat down and I said, hey, Matthew, let's get all the games on the calendar so I don't miss any, just like last year. And he goes, oh, you missed one last year. I'm like, what do you mean I missed one? And he goes, remember that time the coach didn't have the winter tournament on the schedule and you flew in late and got there right at the end? And I wanted to be like, what about the other 29 games that I was there, right? But what did he remember? The one I missed. We have to have conversations of the ones we love the most and ask the question, what is the one or two things I can do in this role to serve you? And with him, it was making sure that I was at the games. And so how do we keep our mission in front of us? It's about living a personal mission statement and starting that conversation. So today, find that object, have that conversation, write in your journal what that's all about. Start that conversation with your family. And most importantly, if anything, choose one word. Choose one word today and just start living it for the week. And the great thing is, if it's not your word, it's not your word. You can change it. So in closing, I will say this. Everywhere I go, I take a group of handwritten notes. And you remember when I talked about I spend a few minutes in gratitude every day that helps me see things differently? This is my grandma. And up until the age of 87, she wrote me a handwritten note all the time. Still have a lot of those. But at the age of 87, she learned email. Anybody had an old person learn email before? Yeah. So she would email me every single day. And what she taught me was not only the power of the handwritten note, but the power of family and making sure they're first. Because every day she would email me at 8 o'clock, and then guess what she would do? Stare at the computer, right? Waiting for what? The reply. And so it didn't matter how crazy my day was. If I looked up at the clock and it was 9 o'clock, I would run back to my office or grab my phone real quick and say, hi, Grandma, and give her a reply. Because I knew that was the most important thing because she was waiting on me. So she taught me the importance of family. So the handwritten note, if you're looking for an area to find gratitude and improve in, it's this right here. I sat down every week and wrote the girls a note when they left for college. I didn't know what to do at a Marriott the other night, and I found these cards. So I gave Elaine at the front desk a big shout out, and when I returned the next day, she said it was the first time in 3 years that she had been recognized at Marriott in the morning huddle. Didn't know what to do for Mom a couple years ago. Mom, I know you still have this note, but I wrote Mom a happy Mother's Day and how proud I was of her, of kicking cancer's butt, and how much I love her and our relationship. And about 2 weeks later, because it takes quite a while to get to Iowa and the postage and the post office, I got this text. Just got your loving letter. Thank you for being a loving son. Cherish it forever. Love you so much. This is my dog, Honey. I wonder why she was looking out the window every day at 3 o'clock. Well, guess who's coming down the street every day at 3 o'clock? Postman, right? What's he give her? Treats. Well, and then I noticed my neighbor Alex was sitting at the mailbox every day. What is he waiting for? The mailman, right? What's he give? Treats. So that day, I didn't mention treats, but I wrote the Baldwin post office, and I said, hey, I don't know if you know this or not, but Kevin's a rock star. We love him. And the next day, Kevin knocked on the door, took off his glove, and said, hey, thank you for the note. My manager's treating me different because of the note that you wrote. And so I could go on and on about stories, my daughter writing it for her friends, but these make a difference. And everywhere I go, I hear the results of the handwritten note. So I encourage you, take some time today and drop somebody a handwritten note. It makes a difference to the people that you will meet. So in closing, how do we change our habits? Focus on our paradigms, use proactive language, stay in our circle of influence. Where do I find time? Pick the 2 or 3 most important. Schedule that Q2 time. Get away from that phone for short amounts of time. I know you need to pay attention to it, but make sure we put it down. And then last but not least, how do we keep our mission in front of us? Start that conversation not only with yourself, but with your family, and choose that one word. So, going all the way back to the top with the 2 minutes that we have left, what is one takeaway that you could use right away that would help you in that area that you want to improve in? If you will one last time go into that chat box, what is the one takeaway from everything we've talked about this morning that you could put in place right now that would help you improve in your area? I'm going to call John back up and let him share his one takeaway from that. I cannot tell you how much of an honor it was to spend some time with you this morning. I will be back in studio as a member next month. And if there's anything that I can do to help in any single way, my personal information is here. You can email me. This is my cell phone, text. Give me a follow on Twitter. But here's what I promise you. I'm really good at keeping in touch with people. And if there's an area that you're struggling with that you really want to get better at, let's do work together. Let's do life together. K2, you and I have been on a roll for a while. Let's get back in touch. Those of you that I've met in studio, let's commit to living our best lives. And it's all about this right here, taking one step to improve. Thank you very much. I'm going to call John back up. And it was an absolute honor to be with you this morning.
Let's rise to your feet and give Matt Miller, my friend, my board member, my studio member, my brother, a big hand. Thank you, Matt. Well done. Guys, it is right on time, 11:30 Central. I'm going to go a little bit extra credit, a little bit after hours. This is O'Leary after hours, okay? So grab a drink, get some ice cubes in it. I just want to share the 3 pages of notes that I took on Matt. I'm not going to share personally what I wrote down as far as what my takeaways were, as much as the highlights and the impact. So I'm going to buzz through these really quickly. It's going to take about 97 seconds. So Matt, this is what I heard. I think it's important I'm going to go full screen, when we hear something to go to write down what we heard and what it meant to us. So guys, ladies, friends, at home, on the road, wherever you may be right now, from Mr. Miller, this is what I heard. Work-life balance is impossible. You heard that. And then Matt challenged that, and he said, no, it's not impossible. You can do this. You can achieve this. Small changes. If you want to do small changes, you work with behaviors. But if you want to do big changes, you work on, do you remember the word? Paradigms. I like that a lot. Small changes work on behaviors. Big changes work on paradigms. That's how we view life. It's a structure with which we use. Let's challenge ourselves to see things differently. The problem with waiting for someone else to act, speak, love is that it is outside of our control of influence. You can't control them, so stop waiting for them. We show up. We choose. Events can help us change the paradigm in which we live and see our lives, both positively and negatively. But we can use both to elevate the way we use our view, our perspective to see life. Everyone we encounter, Matt really challenged us on this one. Everyone we encounter is fighting a battle with which we know very little. So choose to show up with an awful lot of compassion and empathy. Not only can how we see things influence what we see in the world in which we live, but the words we speak can influence our world. Actually, the words we speak can change our very lives. If we say things with a positive lens, it has a 7-fold influence. If we say things through a negative lens, I'm not good enough, I'm no good, whatever it is, it's a 70-fold influence. Big deal. We talked about the circle of control and the circle of influence, and which one do we spend the majority of our time in? Do we spend more time focusing on the things you can control, the things you can't? Be honest. And once you know, do better. One more page, guys. We're almost there. Matt said, I used to kind of complain about my son's dirty room. And now that I'm 4 weeks into him being gone at college, I would do anything to have that kid back in my house, to have that room dirty again. I have a friend who I love dearly, whose son recently took his own life. And he says something very similar. He would do anything in the world to get that boy back. My friends, none of us have any clue what's going to happen tomorrow, but we have complete control on how we show up today in this moment. Don't waste this moment. Don't miss this moment. The problem we face today is that there are many things that are pulling us in many different directions. We think everything is always urgent and important. So slow down. Matt talked about hitting the pause button and making sure we jot down a couple things that actually do matter. 160. Write that one down, underline it, and then commit to doing better. 160 is the amount of times each day we grab this phone. I know I'm guilty of it. I would imagine the majority of us tuning in right now are as well. When you grab it, make sure you're being intentional. Don't just grab it because you're bored. What a mistake that would be to wish away these moments in idle usage of our phones. So what's your one word? We heard words like intentional, impact, patience, authenticity, cultivate, great word, balance, trust, proactive. Intentional, proactive people have big pause buttons. Great quote from Matt Miller. And the final thing I wrote down, what are the one or two things that I can do in this role to better support and love you in that role that you have? So as a role of a business owner, that's my job, an author, a speaker. What's one or two things I can do to better support my team who are all listening to me down the hall right now? It's an important question that I ought to be asking not only me, but asking them specifically. Great question. And then go home and look to my left, your right. That's my family right here. They're up and down this wall. I don't know if I've ever asked my kids that question. What's one thing, Jack, Patrick, Henry, or Grace, that I can do as your daddy to even better love you, to better support you, to better ensure that you know I'm there for you? What's one thing? Maybe two things. And then Beth, what's one or two things that I can do to better support you as a spouse? Mom and dad, what's a couple things I can do to support you as a better son? Great question. It's a question I learned today from In Studio, brought to you by Matt Miller. It's Webcast 29. I want to thank you all for being part of our community. This is a labor of love. Our focus is on each one of us, myself included, doing a little bit better today than we did yesterday. And to know and to believe and to be ensured that we're not on this journey by ourselves. There are ladies and gentlemen rolling up their sleeves one Monday every month to talk about life, talk about relationships, talk about faith, talk about challenges and opportunities, and how we each can do it a little bit better tomorrow than we did yesterday. What a gift. What an honor to be with you. I want to thank you for tuning in this time. And until we're back together next time, I am John O'Leary. I am thanking my brother over here, Matt Miller, and I'm thanking each one of you for being part of our program. So for this time, and until next time, this is John O'Leary. Have an awesome month of September, and we will see you in the video features throughout the month on Sundays, and then again back live in October. You guys have a great day. God bless, and stay on fire. See you soon.